My chances of surviving a white child in the bush alone at the height of that war were really nothing. A soldier spotted me, took aim. I could see his finger on the trigger.
Robin Landsong has experienced intense contrast in this human life. Abuse and trauma, surviving a war, heaven on earth in an African village, multiple profound near-death and out-of-body experiences.
She found my lifeless body. I was called back to life by the medicine song of my mama. I was so close to reuniting with Divine Source, but her calling song went through the veils.
She is the best person I can think of to speak into the contrast of the human experience, transmuting suffering into love.
The soldiers came back. They attacked the village. As best as I know to this point, I could be the only.
Robin Landsong, welcome back. We have done a couple of interviews previously. I'll put the links in the description. Today, we're going to start with Robin giving a summary of her experiences in Africa and her NDEs. Stick around because at the end, she's going to give a transmission of the love she experienced in her NDE.
So, like you said, if they want the full length, they can go to the previous interviews, which, again, I so appreciate your work and what you do in the world. And so I'll give the mini summary just so we can have some context for our later discussion. And so when I was 8 years old, it was 1977, so post-Vietnam War. The Rhodesian War had already been going on for many years. So Rhodesia is now Zimbabwe, and that's above South Africa on the east side of Africa, near Madagascar. And so really what's so interesting as I did the research to understand the context of what happened to me is, again, Vietnam War had ended, and so many of those men were having trouble integrating, and the Rhodesian War was still full on, and 1977 was the height of that war. And so what happened is I was abducted. I'm an American, and I was abducted from the U.S., taken out of the U.S. Sometimes people ask, how could he have gotten you out of the United States? In 1977, extremely easily. There wasn't really conversations about child abduction, certainly wasn't conversations about human trafficking to the level that we have now. I'm very grateful for the people who are bringing that conversation to the place it needs to be. So when I became conscious, I didn't realize, but I was in Rhodesia, like I said, now Zimbabwe, at the height of the war. I was assaulted by the abductor. He broke my ribs, injured my neck, and ended up giving me to another man. And that man left me in the bush. And really my chances of surviving a white child in the bush alone at the height of that war were really nothing. And again, I was 8 years old in the bush in Zimbabwe, and I was picked up by soldiers, and I thought that was going to be my last moment. They took me to a place that I now know was one of the most dangerous places. Had an argument over whether to help me. One wanted to help me, and one wanted to kill me. They literally had an argument over me. So obviously the one that had that natural instinct to care for a child, that fatherly protective instinct, he took me out of there and gave me to a village that he thought would be sympathetic to a white child. And he was right. They took me in and they fed me. And one woman in particular, just feeling this again, she mothered me. And that there's a word in many African cultures, Ubuntu. It's often pronounced Ubuntu because it has a B in, but it's really pronounced Ubuntu. And that means I am because we are. And so that cultural norm put in place is why she took the risk to care for a child that wasn't her own, wasn't her race, wasn't even her language. And so she took me in. The children welcomed me in. They put black ash on my skin to make me more look like them. And she sang to me. She sang me in. And so my singing is different than hers, but I'm just going to share again a bit of that singing that she did for me to welcome me into her world, her safety, and her mothering. Oh, yo. Oh, And so again, I was taken in. I didn't understand the context of the civil war that I was in. I ended up wandering too far from the village. I went to a creek that had been a previously safe place. I didn't know there was a battle starting near the creek. A soldier spotted me, took aim, and I was so close I could see his finger on the trigger. And when his gun barrel became just a circle, I thought, this is my last moment alive, and that the people of the village have loved me, and he doesn't. He hates me. And so he pulled the trigger, the bullet grazed the top of my head, blew me off my feet, and I crossed into my death experience. And I'm just going to give a kind of little piece of that because this will be related to the transmission of the love I received during that death experience. And so I crossed over, I met two sisters, I moved on to several other beings who were helping me purify any belief that I was not worthwhile, that I was less than, that the abuse meant that something was wrong with me. And so these beings, literally, some of them went through me to purify the shame and confusion that I was not an aspect of divine source. And so this is some of my art behind me. And so kind of the original source, and that we're all a gem of divine source, that we're all this kind of like a ribbon of divine source here on earth, to have these experiences, to learn through hard things, to awaken through our struggles, through our joys and our delights. So this one particular being that I met, he had a narrow face and a beard, and he was wearing a robe that was kind of felted wool that was wide at the sleeves, and he had a sheep herder staff. And his presence was pure peace. And when I stood before him, I couldn't remember why I would have any distress. And so he bowed his forehead to mine and showed me, again, just what I'm saying, that we are all gems in this living matrix of brilliance, and that when we deliver kindness, compassion, loyalty, just a moment of saying, I see you, you're real, you matter, you're worthwhile, then we light up this matrix of our living lines of connection to all of life, to every frog, every mountain, every fish, every dragonfly, every person, every child. So again, I'm going to sing for a moment from his presence, and at the end, we'll do several minutes of a direct transmission. So I am ni hea ho him I am na I am ne he
If you like what you're hearing in this podcast and you want to hear more from Robin and have a chance to interact with her live, I have great news. She'll be teaching a live workshop October 17th, followed by a live Q&A on the topic of embodiment from numbness to aliveness in my membership. You can get access for as little as $10 a month. Come with your questions and hang out with us live. I can't wait to see you there. Link is in the description, pinned comment, and right here. Now back to the show.
And the reason I love to share my death experiences is because I want people to become refreshed. That some people are tired from difficulties in life, tired from loss, grief, betrayal, and that I want to enliven your sense of well-being so that you can even take better care of yourself, so that your capacity to see truth, to see wellness, to see opportunity, and is increased, to that your confidence in your own healing process. Because again, I lived through war, and as we were just discussing, after that death experience, I got returned back to my body. I was called back to life by the medicine song of my mama. So she found my lifeless body. She was stopping the blood flow, but it was her calling song. I was so close to reuniting with divine source that I call the great heart. But it was her calling song that went through the veils, and I heard her on the other side. And that's why I returned. I had no medical intervention. I had no getting to the hospital. It was literally her medicine song that saved my life. And so when I returned, it was very difficult. And the soldiers came back. They attacked the village. And as best as I know to this point, I could be the only survivor of that attack on the village. And I ended up being taken across the border to South Africa, hospitalized there. From there, they kind of interviewed me or grilled me, and I told them that I didn't know how to speak Afrikaans. I had no accent. So they figured out that I was American. And then they assigned an agent to transport me back to the US. I was reunited with my family, which was very, very difficult. It was a family of denial. It was a family of secrets. It was a family of, if we don't talk about it, it never happened. So I never got to discuss anything that happened to me during the war. They never asked me about who abducted me. They just had no capacity to handle my experience. So they didn't. And so I never spoke about it with my parents or my siblings. And so both my parents are gone. My siblings are in denial. And so that's why I love doing trauma resolution work with people. I'm a craniosacral therapist, trained in polyvagal theory, trained in many different things about how do we restore our ability to be with difficulty in compassion in our body so that we are able to turn towards our difficult truth and therefore be able to hear other people's challenges instead of just, blocking out anything difficult and leaving people isolated. I'm with many groups that are about flattening the curve on the loneliness epidemic. And a big part of loneliness is not being connected to ourselves. And so that's why trauma resolution, grief work, embodiment, eating well, movement is so important, because then we increase our self-connection, which increases our capacity to connect to others in a deep, intimate way. And one of the things I love about Brené Brown's work is that vulnerability is essential for intimacy. And so I'll pause there and open up to your questions.
Yes, thank you so much for, again, sharing your story. Your story is one of the most meaningful to me out of the many that I've listened to. As I was telling you before we began this recording, I purchased your audiobook yesterday and I listened to it all yesterday. I put aside my work projects. I listened to it. I took it to the gym. I listened to it. I listened to it in the car. I listened to it before I fell asleep. I could not stop listening to it.
Oh, wow.
Your story, to me, one of the things that stands out, as you've experienced so much contrast in your life from the even stories you go into in your book that you haven't shared in our interviews about what you experienced as a child, the abuse you experienced, the traumatic experiences, what you experienced during the war, meeting a family in Africa with a beautiful mother who gave you the mothering that you needed, having her call you back to life, and then having the soldiers return and wipe out your village. Contrasting that with the near-death experiences that you've had. It's such a profound story, weaving together the hells and the heavens that you experienced, and to see where you've taken it in your life right now with the healing work that you do and the medicine, music, and the art. I like to talk to you about that process of healing. First of all, what was it like for you as a child to finally experience mothering in that way?
What a beautiful question. Thank you. It changed my entire life trajectory, because to that point, my biological mother didn't have the capacity to be a loving mother. She was unpredictable, sometimes violent, and her capacity to be loving was diminished by that she hadn't done her trauma resolution work. So to have this woman look me in the eye, see the injury, the woundedness I was in, and receive me while she wasn't safe either. You know, she was in the context of this war also. And so to have her touch me, bring me closer to her, sing to me, it taught me what caring is. It taught me what to aim for of who I wanted to be in the world. Because so much of my American family taught me what I didn't want to be, and that they were racist and unpredictable. I was unsafe. I couldn't be myself, like so many people in their home life. And so with this woman, my mom Yetan, I could be a whole new self. I could be vulnerability and strength in the presence of her vulnerability and strength. And then again, when she called me back to life, she taught me the potency of the human voice, of the ability to draw on the land, call on the ancestors, and change people's physical, emotional, and spiritual health. And that's really why I turned around, because I realized I hadn't done my purpose, which was to sing to people just as she was doing for me. And I had to do my own healing process for 15 years. And about 12 years into my healing process, I thought, I want to share what I've learned with people. I want to bring this level of transformation to other people's lives. And so that's when I was slowing down on my needs for therapy and bought all the body work, although I still receive a lot of sessions for my own body health. And that's when I went to massage school, got my craniosacral therapy training, and really dove into then my efforts transferring from the entire focus being my healing process to how can I enrich other people's lives? Like, what's the next training? Attachment trauma, nutrition, brain health. So all these things, so that at this point, sometimes I can sing to people just for like a minute and 20 seconds, and it can end up helping on multiple levels. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with human design, but I'm a manifester. Yes. And so I love hearing how my offerings impact people. And I get teary every time with this. Somebody wrote the other day after one of the transmissions I did and said, I can hardly even speak it. She said, that deep, dark, unconsolable hole inside my being is no longer there.
Wow.
And sometimes when I hear that kind of feedback, I think, how lucky am I that this is my work, that this is the outcomes of, like you say, the heaven and hell I've gone through, the death experiences. And, as you know from listening to the audiobook, after the massacre, I was entirely alone. Mm-hmm. And the first life that I saw was the monkeys. And that they were moving around and making noise. Well, I started coming undone because I was the only one still moving. And those kind of experiences are so humbling to the core. And honestly, kind of only people who have been to something through that level, other war or other extreme circumstances can get kind of that magnitude. But more people have, something happened in their life. Even children that I've worked with, like, children that have migraines that can't go out for sports or lost a parent, or everybody's got some difficulty in their lifetime. And so these skills of being able to move from self-beratement to self-compassion, from numbness to aliveness, from guardedness to open-heartedness with yourself, these are the ways we transform our lives and therefore everyone around us. And so that commitment and that confidence that our efforts to do our healing work are going to make a difference in our own life and then in others, that's my mission, is to uplift people's confidence around that the efforts are worthwhile.
Thank you for sharing. This is a question that gets asked a lot, but I really would like to hear your perspective on it. Having gone through all the suffering that you've been through, and also having the near-death experiences and the out-of-body experiences, feeling the love and peace of the other side, what is your perspective on why we experience suffering here?
That's a big question. So I'm going to go to the big backed up view, and that I refer to the divine source as the great heart. So the great heart is this magnitude of loving, peaceful source. And as we incarnate as humans, we need to learn, how do we open that up in ourselves so that we can shine that radiance that the great heart is. And so sometimes there's things about, if our life was so smooth and so simple, we never have to dig deep to find out what we're made of. Like the level of prayer I had to do after the massacre, when I was by myself and no humans around and just the monkeys as the only other living thing, in the trees and the birds, I had to bond with the life that was around me to a level I never would have had to if I had had a normal, smoother life. So nature for me is my kin. And there's a bonding there in that I am made of the same ingredients as the river, as the trees, as the soil. And that being so humble to need connection beyond comfort. And I'll give another example of when I was with the abductor, and of course he was a psychopath, extremely dangerous. He could kill me at any second. And so at one point I had a breaking point, and I found one of his weapons, and I was holding a knife at him. And I'm 8. He's this highly trained military man. He can, there's no way I was actually going to succeed in being able to attack him and kill him. And so when he saw me wielding this weapon, he started laughing. And I went up above, out of myself, kind of in that outer body that was so beneficial because then I could see down from the big perspective. And I could see he had no capacity whatsoever to see me as a living person, let alone a vulnerable child who needed care. And I realized my soul survival is more important right now than my physical survival. And that he was laughing because I was becoming more like him. I was wielding a weapon and I was threatening him. And so he was actually pleased. And so in that moment, I made the decision to drop the knife, to stop the fight, because my soul needed to not become more like him. And that if he physically killed me, that would be better than me becoming like him. And so I remember trying to have a discussion with somebody once, and they hadn't been broken down, so they still were so egoic. They thought, I can get what I want, I can have what I want. And me knowing that in that moment, I couldn't have what I wanted. I couldn't protect myself. And so I have been so humbled in a way that that person hadn't been. So I couldn't communicate with that person. I couldn't get across the way that we don't always get what we want. We don't always get to have entitlement, which is, I want this to be easy. I want it my way. People should always do what I want my way, which, we all can, be in that place sometimes, but some people make it a permanent mindset, and then their growth capacity is lowered. So going back to that big picture view, some of these things that humble us, that force us to have to reach out to divine source in a way we never would have called out for if we were comfortable, then we get that learning, we get that transformation, and that my compassion for other people's suffering is as big as an ocean, because my suffering has been as big as an ocean. So, and again, getting to do all my years of trauma therapy and trauma work and body work and retreats and all the things I've done to heal. And I really want to emphasize eating well is an essential ingredient in trauma resolution. If someone's eating a high sugar, high carbohydrate, low nutrient diet, your brain capacity to do even compassionate action is lower, and your reactivity is hair trigger. So I've been sugar-free for over 12 years, and I will be sugar-free for the rest of my life. I'm gluten-free, dairy-free, and that's what I am committed to, so that my mind, my cells can be as clear as possible to serve my mission, which is to serve people's awakening. And if somebody writes to me and says, I'm getting back to my art because I saw your art, that is impact I love to hear.
I'm so glad that you brought up the topic of diet and nourishing yourself, because that's something I'm also extremely passionate about. And I'm a very, very sensitive person, like physically sensitive. If I feel the effects of what I eat immediately. So I'm very, very passionate about helping people to get closer to the earth and eat real foods from the earth and nourish their bodies. And we're friends on Facebook, so I see the meals that you post sometimes, and they look so delicious and they're so simple. Mm-hmm. A lot of times with beets and vegetables and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just cutting up yellow beet, putting it, cooking it in coconut oil in your cast iron pan, then some pesto sauce on it. That's a great dinner.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And exactly what you said. And when sometimes people say, I don't have time, I think, well, do you have time to be in the emergency room?
Good question.
That takes 9 hours. If you took that 9 hours or 15 hours, you're in the emergency room and you spent that cooking, that sounds way more fun.
Right. I love that.
And also we talk a lot about retirement and investing your, planning for funding. And I really liked the idea of investing in your cellular health for your retirement. And that I hang out with a lot of naturopaths and functional medicine doctors. And the key is, as much as we can invest in our organ vitality, that determines what our retirement's going to be like. And so planning for our elder years is eating well all along. Every plant-based diet thing we can do is going to be investing in. And I like to say too, that's not a guarantee that we don't get an illness or get something, because sometimes people can get into like a blame game of like, oh, you got cancer, you must have thought wrong, or, I don't know, done something wrong. And there's really no point in going down that road. And what people are trying to do when they're blaming somebody else for having an illness is pretend that they are not also vulnerable in a human body. And so some of my clients who have a bigger illness, a chronic illness, are the best self-care people I know. They eat immaculate. They take care of themselves super well. And it doesn't always result in not having an illness, but it does result in having a bit more clear mind, having more vitality. And I'm 55, so going sugar, no wheat, no dairy. I swim in the lake. I do all kinds of fun activities. I dance. Last night I did my belly dance class. And so investing in movement, investing in our time in the kitchen is making our longevity and our overall health better.
I love that. I love what you said about investing in your cellular retirement. I never thought of that before, but it's so true. Also, you mentioned swimming in the lake. I've seen you posting about that on Facebook as well. And every time I think, oh, that must be so invigorating.
Yeah, I have these mermaid fins and then I can swim really fast. And so I swim all the way across the lake and back. And it's just so amazing. And I love getting inspiration from other people's lives. There's the first woman who swam across the English Channel. I watched her movie recently. And so when I start to feel a little bit sorry for myself, like, oh, the waves are in my face or it's a little bit cold, I just think, she swam the English Channel. So taking inspiration is a sign of open-heartedness. If when we become jealous of somebody else's accomplishments, that's a moment to look into our heart and see if we can soften towards our needs, our dreams. Are we jealous because we're telling ourselves we can't do it? Rather than inspired because we're telling ourselves, my dream might be different than theirs, but I can go just as big in my version of that. And if I can switch on that, so we are talking about my book. Yes. This is the prototype of the cover. It's going to have a few more edits, but this is my Loving Bravely book, and it will be out in Kindle ebook. It will be early October. I'm not exactly sure the date, 2024 this year. And then it will become the physical book, the hard book, the softcover book. And then after that will be the audiobook. And I spent about a year making the audiobook last year. And it's my narration. I sing on it a great deal. And my second sound engineer, we just had such a fun time putting in some sound effects from Africa. And I just feel really deeply proud of it. And I just get so humbled that I get to put this work out to serve people to their awakening, to their enlivening, because what I really want and what I love to hear is people say, I watched what you do and it inspired me to do my gift. It inspired me to put my work out in the world. Or one of the best compliments I got when I was like 20 something and I gave my very first talk. And this woman came up to me later and she said, that was the most important talk of my life because you helped me get through my denial. And she said, my daughter tried to tell me something important and I shut her down. I'm going to go back to my daughter and I'm going to ask her what she needs to tell me, and I'm going to not interrupt her, and I'm going to listen, even if it's hard to hear that I didn't protect her as a child and that she was abused. And she just said, my life and my daughter's life is going to be changed because of that talk. So that's, again, I'm a manifester on the human design. And so I love hearing impact of what changes people make and how we can all spark each other of being the brilliant gems in the web of life.
So beautiful. And yes, that book that you just shared is what I was talking about. The audio version that I listened to is, I think, the first half of that, right? And it is a work of art how you tell your story. I'll just say that. So we'll have the link to the book in the show notes for people to check that out. Getting back to your story here, I'd like to ask you about something you said earlier in the interview. You mentioned that your African mother was opening her heart to you and singing you into her story, into her safety, even though she herself wasn't safe because she was in the middle of a war. And I would love to know, from your perspective, with everything you've been through, how can we create that safety within ourselves so that we can be a safe place for others with everything that's going on in the world and in our lives?
Giving experiences of belonging creates equality and safety. So when we see that person who's just entering in, who's new, and we just walk up and we welcome them, that's giving an experience of belonging. It's increasing their equality in the group and their experience of belonging. And, so of course it can become much more complicated or difficult situations. And so, but just that simple statement of giving experiences of belonging increases, and inclusion increases equality. And that can just be spread into so many levels: economic, racial, gender, and to think about the other piece that, and I learned this from Robert Thurman, the Buddhist teacher, is look at the equality or the non-equality in our relationships. And so he said this teaching, and at first I kind of balked at it, and then I started to apply it in my life and see it. He said that when two people are meeting, there's three potentialities. One person can go superior, and then that is likely to put the other person in inferior. And this person might want to meet at equality, but if this person keeps going inferior or superior, then it just kind of creates this odd dynamic. If two people meet at equality, I see you, you matter, you know something important, I know something important, let's learn from each other. Let's be curious, because equality is, the essential ingredient is curiosity and seeing the other person. Then all kinds of great things can happen there. If a person approaches in a kind of inferior position, the other person neurobiology is likely to go superior. And we've either been or met people who chronically go inferior, and other people around them, if they keep trying to meet them at equality, will get frustrated. And so sometimes just kind of neurobiologically, they might go superior. So again, I balked at this when I first heard this teaching, and then I started watching in my life. And I watched if people approached me inferior, I got more egoic. And then I'd be like, oh, no, just be quiet. Just meet them at equality. And if they keep laying themselves down as a doormat, just stay at equality. Just stay at equality. Get curious about their strengths to help them rise up and meet you at equality. I'm not sure as much can be done when people are in a chronic superior state like narcissism. That's kind of a bigger problem to solve. Entitlement, superiority, or people need to be with their vulnerability and lay down their entitlement in order for transformation to happen there, which is a big project.
Right. Kind of along the same lines as that question. Something that you describe in your book so beautifully is the culture of that African village and some of the language you use, like how they had sunshine in their smile and love was woven into the garments. They made eye contact with one another, and even their names were music. And so I'm just curious, what is your thoughts on how we can create that? Because you talk about the contrast between what you experienced in that village and then what you experienced in, I think it was the farmhouse that you went to after that, and how you didn't feel that same safety and love. What are some things that we can do to create that culture of love for people?
I think one of the interesting things there is often when people don't have much, they share more. And when people have more than enough, they actually start getting hoarding mentality and kind of less sharing. So because in the village, there isn't any material comfort whatsoever. There wasn't running water. There still isn't electricity. There still is, they're hand pumping water in this year. And that's one of my goals as my projects make money, is to improve their water system and the quality of the water. So it's, all kinds of research shows this. When people are at or below poverty level, if we're going to define it that way, they actually share more because they have to. And I remember going to this household. When I did come back, I was raised more middle class, and I had a boyfriend that I stayed with who was more working class, and they shared. And it was this kind of revelation for me. So I think that's the thing about the balance between making sure we're resourced enough, we're not giving away everything so we don't have enough. But when we do have more, then seeing how it can uplift somebody else, and just looking at what are the ways that we can balance economic justice in the world. And again, that's a huge, big picture question. I think always looking at filling our own cup from the inside in many ways, and then seeing if we can overflow some of our resources to another person who doesn't have resources. And again, I want to say, if that other person isn't doing some of their self-care, those resources might just kind of flow out and they may not make use of the full gift. So giving and receiving in a culture where there isn't as much, that reciprocity might have more integrity to the nature and to the land. Giving and receiving in American culture, where there is a lot of excess or entitlement, can become more complex. But still, I think one of Anne Frank's famous quotes is, you don't have to be wealthy to give your heart, to give kindness, to give recognition, and that you can start doing that right away.
I love that. One final question for you, and then we can move on to the transmission. What are some of the things that have helped you to heal from your experiences and ground your nervous system and get to where you are today?
So I did do a lot of talk therapy, but I found EMDR therapy was way faster and way more potent. It's not for everybody, but for those of us with a kind of visionary, creative brain, it's extraordinarily helpful. I am a craniosacral therapist now. I received craniosacral massage, and massage that was very nervous system friendly. So slow, with a practitioner who'd really pay attention, and that if I was having trauma response, then that was what we did. We worked with just that movement, dance. So I recently just said to one of my dance teachers, I do partner dance now, which is about lead, follow, engagement. Where are my boundaries? Where are their boundaries? What's the connection? I said to him, I don't do therapy anymore. I come to your dance workshops. And he loved hearing that. So being right where we are in our developmental processes and not expecting ourselves to be ahead of where we are. I couldn't have done partner dance 15 years ago. I wouldn't have even wanted to do the belly dance I'm doing now. But investing in body work time with a practitioner that you feel you can be really relaxed and vocalize your boundaries, nope, stop for a minute, or that's too deep, or I don't want you to go there. that being able to state boundaries and permission to say no to people in your life and to practitioners is an essential ingredient in our healing process. So again, the nutrition, and the big piece, I cannot emphasize this enough, taking care of your adrenal health. So our adrenals are what gets so taxed from big stresses. And so there's all kinds of things you can do to nourish your adrenals, vitamin C. I recommend seeing a naturopath, a functional medicine physician, or acupuncturist or an herbalist if you would like help with your adrenal health. You can also research the herbs, like there's ashwagandha, rhodiola, cordyceps, licorice, all kinds of things you can do. And again, the no sugar diet is the absolute best thing you can do for your adrenal health.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Robin. Would you like to proceed to the transmission now?
Yes, very much. All right. So we're going to drop in, and I recommend some of the best ways to receive a transmission like this is to check in with your breath, check in with your body sensation. And so those are the keys to embodiment. Those are the keys to all mindfulness practices. So noticing what it feels like to breathe in and noticing what it feels like to exhale. And so I'm going to pick the being in my first death experience. That was the one that I call my royal shepherd. Some might consider Jeshua. So I'm going to drop into his presence, and I'm going to transmit that, fill my heart up with that, and then transmit that across. And I have found it actually works through YouTube videos, so this will be great. And so this will last for about 2 minutes. In my classes, I do it for 30 minutes. I am here. Ayo. I am there. I am here.
Thank you, Robin.
So, of course, you were my primary focus. And then from there, kind of radiating out. And I particularly was focusing on a listener who might have cerebral palsy and just that kind of neurological regulation and, coordination muscle. And it was like I was picturing kind of you that the song and the transmission was going directly to. And then from there, kind of radiating out from you and this person with cerebral palsy, just like really having quite a significant shift.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So maybe we'll find something in the comments of somebody who's the shifts that might have happened for people.
Yeah. I'm excited to post this. Thank you for being willing to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Robin, thank you so much for being willing to share your experiences and this transmission of love for us. And I would like to ask you to share where people can find you, where they can get your book, and anything else you have going on.
Mm-hmm. So my website is my name, robinlandsong.com. And so the book will be out, Kindle ebook, physical audiobook, this October. And that will be on all the platforms, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all of them. My music is on Spotify, my Roots Drinking Rain album. And then also there'll be a singing medicine library for membership on my website. I have my towels. This is my artwork printed on a towel. You can see it's a nice soft towel. And so the more of that will be coming out. I have all 12 astrological signs, my near-death experience art, and there'll be a calendar, all kinds of great stuff. So just keep checking my website and more will get posted there. So Spotify, my website, Amazon, all of it. It'll be great. And people are welcome to sign up for my classes. And I do the transmissions in the classes. And I have 5-person groups, and I'll see if I can keep up with the individual sessions or not. Once the book is out, we'll see what happens. So it's just my honor to serve. And in the future, I'll be doing more in-person retreats, and I'll be doing a tour in spring 2025.
Wonderful. I'm so excited for everything that you have going on. Thank you so much, Robin. I'll have those links in the description as well.
Thank you so much. And again, I've done a lot of podcasts, and your audience is quite lovely people.
Thank you for watching and listening. Your views, likes, comments, and shares truly make the biggest difference in supporting this channel. Don't forget to check the show notes for all the links to today's guest, as well as my links. You'll find me on social media at Love Covered Life, my website, lovecoveredlife.com, and the Be a Guest link for anybody who would like to be a guest on the channel. I have great news. Love Covered Life podcast is coming available on audio podcasts. You can find it wherever you listen to your audio podcasts.